Big mountain environments are extremely powerful. It's a mix of natural beauty and force that is beyond human comprehension. For those who reach the summit of Mount Everest, they've reached the top of the world. For many others, injury and death awaits them, such as the fate of Marisa Strydom, who died while climbing Mount Everest. Marisa Strydom, aged 34, was a lecturer at the Monash University, Australia. She died on the world's tallest peak on the 21st of May 2016. Overcome by altitude sickness at 8,000 meters, which is well above the climbing death zone and close to the 8,848-meter summit. Marisa was hallucinating and struggling for oxygen. She slowly slipped away in the arms of her husband, Robert Gropel, as they were trying to descend. The expedition leader Arnold Koster gave an official statement about the events that happened between the 19th and 22nd of May 2016. On the 20th of May, their perfectly looking summit push turned into a disaster. On the 19th of May, the whole team had left the South Col and everyone submitted the next day. Marisa, on the other hand, was exhausted and decided to turn around just above the South Summit at 8 a.m. in the morning due to fatigue. What happened on that fateful expedition? Everything was going according to plan. Then suddenly 2 team members of the expedition, Eric Arnold and Marisa Strydom, got sick during the descent. Eric fulfilled his childhood dream of climbing Everest on the 20th of May. He was perfectly fine during the ascent, but after the South Summit he started struggling. While descending from the summit, he became slower and slower, and it had become clear that something was wrong. Eric's Sherpa had been climbing with him from the beginning and noticed that he was not in a good condition and asked for assistance right away. They finally managed to bring him to the South Col in a reasonable time. Even though he looked beaten, he was mentally fine. They gave him lots of oxygen, drinks, and food. It looked like he would recover. He passed away that evening in his tent. What happened to Marisa? Marisa was completely fine till the balcony of Everest. She became very slow soon afterwards. They decided to turn around on the South Summit. Normally, it would have given her enough time to descend safely, but her condition deteriorated rapidly. Soon, she became confused and was hardly able to move. Her husband, Robert Gropel, and several Sherpas had struggled all night to bring her down, and miraculously, she had made it back to the South Col that night. She was recovering, and there was hope that she was going to be alright. She walked out of the tent the next morning all by herself. Since helicopter rescue was possible only from Camp 3, they decided to descend again the next morning. Marisa was walking by herself, but after 2 hours, she collapsed on the Geneva Spur. Her husband tried desperately to retrieve her, but she had died by then. Rob was evacuated by helicopter to Kathmandu. What did Robert Gropel see during the last moments of his wife? Robert Gropel first thought that his wife Marisa Strydom was simply exhausted from the effort of climbing Everest. The couple had halted in the death zone area as Strydom looked weak and said that she could not continue. Gropel asked Strydom for her permission to move on to the summit. Little did they know she was suffering from altitude sickness, which would literally cost Strydom her life. Robert asked Marisa, "Do you mind if I go on?" She replied, "Yes, you go on. I'll wait for you here." Robert was sad because he had left her alone, and when he came back from the summit, he knew that something was off. She was hallucinating and weak. Marisa fell unconscious soon after and died in her husband's arms. Retrieving dead bodies is nearly impossible on Everest and looked upon with fear. Thanks to recent advances in helicopter technology, this has changed the strategy. Marisa's body had to be left there, and it was the most difficult decision Robert had taken in his whole life. Sherpa climbers brought Marisa's body down the mountain back to camp number 2 later. A rescue helicopter picked her up and took it to Kathmandu. Strydom was finally on her way home, leaving behind an estimated 200+ dead bodies frozen on Everest. Before setting off, Miss Strydom and her husband had been very much inspired to tackle Everest and 6 other highest mountains on other continents, often called the 7 Summit Challenge. Marisa's death had caused worldwide outrage in the mountaineering community. Some climbers opined that Marisa was looked after by what some climbers have described as some of Nepal's cheapest and riskiest trekking companies. What really happened there during that fateful day? Is the trekking company at fault for what happened to Marisa and Eric? What would you do in such a situation? Share your thoughts in the comment box below.